Hi, this is Matt Wood with Antique American Indian Art, coming again today on Tuesday, give you a little insight into some different areas of collecting Indian art. Today I want to talk about Navajo rugs and how to tell if it's authentic or not. In the southwest areas, in New Mexico and Arizona, we tend to find two dominant weaving cultures. We see the Navajo, and we also see a Mexican culture in New Mexico. Along the Rio Grande specifically, there's a dozen little villages there that traditionally have woven. Today there's just one that's left that's really producing a lot of work today. And I'll show you examples of both that village, which is in New Mexico called Chamayo, and also the Navajo blankets, which I really want to focus on today. When I look at a Navajo blanket, I want to look for three different things to determine that yes, it is Navajo. First, I'm going to look at the end of a rug, and I'm going to notice that there's these little white warp cords that are poking, that are showing here. And when that's showing, when I go right down into it and I look at the cord, I see that it's one cord that's bent around and coming back down, and it's coming up and bending down. This tells me that this is a continuous warp, meaning it's one single warp string that is used for the entire blanket. And that's important because that's how the Navajo build their loom. And understanding how the loom is built and how it's warped tells us whether it's going to be Navajo or not. That's one of the clues. The Navajo loom is a vertical loom, one warp string, figurated the entire loom. We contrast that with the Mexican loom, or also known as the Spanish loom, which is a horizontal loom. Their warp cords, if they've got 60 cords going across their loom, they're actually having 60 little bobbins of thread at the end of their loom. And each warp has its own bobbin. So when they're weaving their rug, which is in a horizontal format, not the Navajo vertical format, it's a horizontal loom. When they want to take it off their loom, they have to literally cut it right off the loom. They take those cut warps, they tie them into knots, and in this piece here, which is from Chamayo in New Mexico, you'll see the warp cords cut and tied into knots, and you didn't see that in the Navajo blanket I showed you. A couple other clues on Navajo blankets will be the side cord, also known as a selvage cord. A little tough to see on this one. Here's another one. They will use a strengthening twisting cord up the sides. That's typical of Navajo, although they'll do some shortcuts and oftentimes won't do it, but if you see it, that helps. Looks like a barber pole decoration up the side. It's a strengthening cord. And the other really dramatic and famous thing that the Navajo will do is something that's called the lazy line. And the lazy line is a line that you can see in here. And if you get down close, you'll see these diagonal lines throughout the blanket. Now sometimes they can drop their stitch at the change of color, and they can use this dropped diagonal line in making design itself. But oftentimes it will just be like over in here, within the same color gradient, and you aren't seeing it as obviously, so you have to look for it. Now the lazy line is achieved by the Navajo's weaving technique, where the woman is sitting in front of her loom and she weaves a block of material, and then she picks up and sits down again and weaves another block of material. But she's got a problem to figure out how to join up those two blocks of material that she's just woven. If she joins them up on the same warp, she's going to create a bump in her rug where one warp has two wefts on top of it. If she just weaves right up to it but doesn't join it up on those two warps, she's got a buttonhole slit. She's got a slit in her rug. So what she'll do is, instead of weaving two blocks like this, she'll essentially weave in triangles. And she will build her blanket up using triangle method and doing the buttonhole stitch, for example, but it's only from one warp, one weft, and it's going down on diagonal line, and she packs it so tightly that it doesn't create a long slit, but it does create a line. And so when you are looking at blankets and you see these diagonal lines, they're not flaws. It's actually part of their weaving nature. Sometimes they're easier to see, sometimes they're harder to see. Sometimes I'll have to hold up a blanket to the sun and try to look through it and try to figure out if there's lazy lines in there or not. But it's a good indication of Navajo. So when we look at those three things, lazy lines, when we look at the selvage cords, which are usually there, particularly in older pieces, and then we look for the continuous warped cords, those are three good indicators of a Navajo. Again, on the horizontal loom pieces, like this one from Chimayo, you'll notice that, again, it was cut off the loom, they left the fringe, and there's not going to be any lazy lines, and there's no selvage cord. So those are all indications that this is not going to be Navajo. Now sometimes we will also see pieces coming in from overseas that are trying to copy Navajos, and you won't have lazy lines. You might not have the fringe. Sometimes they wrap these or they hide it and you don't see it. But you do have to be a bit aware that there's other copies of Navajos coming in today as well. Being a plain weave, the piece should look the same on both sides. Sometimes you're going to be seeing copies where one side is going to be rough and the other side is going to be smooth. Although older pieces that are exposed more on one side than the other might have a faded side and a bright side, but that won't make it's not Navajo. It just means that it got faded on one side more than the other. Anyway, those are some of the tips and some of the ideas on Navajo blankets. I hope that you learned a little bit, and you can always visit our website and get more information there. Thanks so much.